Lust Never Lost Presence, The Velvet Veil, Episode 1. The rain always finds the desperate first. That is how this city works. By midnight, the wealthy vanish into glowing towers above the streets, while everyone else drifts downward into neon. Smoke, loneliness, and hunger. The city breathes differently after dark, slower, more honest. And somewhere beneath all of it, beneath the traffic lights and sleepless windows, the velvet veil waits. Most people never find it. That is intentional. You could walk the same alley 100 times and see nothing except wet pavement, broken brick, graffiti, and shadows. Then one night, after enough grief has hollowed you out, a black door appears where no door existed before. Humans always think they arrive at the velvet veil by accident. They never do. Desire is far more patient than people realize. It waits, quietly, years sometimes, until loneliness finally outweighs fear. Then it guides them to my door. I have watched it happen for a very long time. Long before this city existed, long before electricity, long before men learned how to disguise emptiness with glowing screens and carefully rehearse confidence. Desire survives every civilization, every war, every religion, every attempt humans make to escape themselves. Eventually, it always brings them here. The first thing newcomers notice is the lighting, candlelight, crimson chandeliers, reflections moving across black marble like spilled wine, then the music. Slow piano, cello, voices singing softly in forgotten languages. Then they notice the people, the lonely wife smiling because someone finally looked at her as though she were still becoming instead of fading. The exhausted politician kneeling beside a stranger beautiful enough to ruin him. The woman in black lace whispering into another woman's ear while her fingers tremble against a wine glass. The widower holding someone close for the first time in years because grief becomes unbearable when carried alone for too long. Humans call places like this sinful. That word has always amused me. Most cruelty in this world is born from starvation, not hunger of the body, hunger of the soul, the need to be understood, to be desired, to surrender, to confess. That is what the velvet veil truly offers, not lust. Lust is easy. Bodies are simple creatures? No. What people seek here is recognition, the terrifying relief of being seen. Clearly, most humans spend their entire lives performing versions of themselves they hope will be loved. Then they arrive here and discover how exhausting performance truly is. I watch them carefully when they first enter. The nervous glances, the shaking hands, the wedding rings they remove before putting them back on again, the lies they rehearse silently before speaking aloud. Fear and desire have always shared architecture. That is why confession feels so intimate, and why intimacy feels so dangerous. Some guests stay for one night, some return for years. Some never truly leave at all. The velvet veil changes people. That is the price of honesty. You may think you understand longing. Most people do. Until longing finally looks back at them. Then suddenly, everything becomes much more complicated. Daniel arrived just after 1 a.m. Rain clung to his coat. His hair was wet. His eyes carried the particular exhaustion of a man who had mistaken emotional damage for depth. I knew the shape of him immediately. I had seen it many times. Men like Daniel often believe suffering makes them profound. Sometimes it only makes them selfish in more poetic language. Still, there was something gentle in him once. I could smell it beneath the grief. He stood in the alley staring at the black invitation card in his hand. The velvet veil. Beneath the title were 3 words: confess, indulge, disappear, simple instructions, though most guests only manage one. Daniel looked over his shoulder twice before approaching the door. Both times he considered leaving. Both times he stayed. That told me more about him than any confession could. Lucien opened the door before Daniel knocked. Lucien enjoys timing. He stood immaculate as always in his dark tailored coat, silver. Gloves folded neatly behind his back, pale eyes calm enough to make most people nervous before he ever spoke. "Good evening," Lucien said. Daniel swallowed. "I think I'm lost." "No," Lucien replied. "Not anymore." Humans never know what to do with certainty. Daniel attempted a weak laugh. It failed. Lucien stepped aside. Warm candlelight spilled into the alley. Music drifted outward. A cello. Slow piano. A woman singing softly in a language dead long before Daniel was born. "Name?" Lucien asked. Daniel hesitated. That hesitation interested me. Names matter inside the Velvet Veil, not legal names, not signatures or identification. The Veil prefers older names. The names attached to wounds, to shame, to desire. Finally, Daniel answered quietly. "Danny." Lucien nodded once. "Welcome back, Danny." Daniel frowned. "I've never been here." Lucien smiled slightly. Few people realize how long they've been searching. Then he allowed Daniel inside, and the velvet veil closed around him like a secret. The club embraced Daniel immediately. It always does. People expect decadence when they hear rumors about the velvet veil. They imagine cheap fantasy, red lips, bare skin, desperate bodies. Easy temptation, that misunderstanding amuses me. The veil was never built for lust alone. Lust is simple, useful, often beautiful, but simple. The velvet veil exists for the hungers humans refuse to discuss honestly. The desire to be understood, to be forgiven, to be consumed, to surrender, to disappear. Daniel stepped onto black marble floors, reflecting crimson chandelier light like spilled wine. Velvet curtains hung between private alcoves. Candlelight drifted through smoke and perfume while patrons spoke quietly beneath mirrored ceilings. No one stared openly. That would have been rude, but everyone noticed him. The veil always notices the newly wounded. A woman in emerald silk sat alone at the bar, smiling at her own reflection because, for the first time in years, she remembered she was still beautiful. A man in a gray suit held his drink with both hands, while a stranger whispered something that made tears gather in his eyes. Two women stood near a mirrored column, their bodies close enough to suggest intimacy, but their faces carried something more dangerous than desire, recognition. One of them laughed softly. The other trembled. Daniel tried not to look too long. He failed. Lucien guided him deeper into the room. Past the bar, past the curtains, past the staircase that descended into blue darkness. Daniel slowed near that staircase. Everyone does. There are doors beneath the velvet veil intended for ordinary hunger. There are other doors meant for appetites that should never have learned human language. Lucien noticed Daniel staring. "Not tonight," he said. Daniel blinked. "What's down there?" Lucien's face remained still. What remains after indulgence stops being enough. Daniel did not ask again. Smart, very smart. Lucien seated him inside one of the private booths, hidden behind black velvet curtains. A candle flickered on the table beside a glass of dark red wine. "I didn't order this," Daniel said. "You will," Lucien replied. Then he disappeared back into the club. Daniel sat alone. The booth muffled outside noise until the entire world seemed reduced to candlelight, rain, heartbeat, and thought. Perfect. That was the moment most guests began unraveling. I watched him for several minutes before approaching. Observation matters. Humans reveal themselves beautifully when they believe nobody important is paying attention. Daniel removed his wedding ring twice before putting it back on. Interesting. He stared at the wine longer than necessary. Guilt. He checked his phone 3 times despite no messages arriving. Loneliness. He nearly left once. Fear. All excellent signs. I approached quietly, not theatrically. The truly dangerous things rarely announce themselves dramatically. Daniel noticed me only after I sat across from him. His breath caught immediately. I am accustomed to that reaction. Beauty becomes tedious after enough centuries, but attention remains intoxicating, especially from wounded people. Daniel, I said softly. He blinked. How do you know my name? I know, the one you offered the door. He studied me carefully then. Humans always do. They search my face for signs, fangs, cruelty, obvious monstrosity. Most leave disappointed. I appear painfully human. Black velvet, dark hair, gold jewelry, red lips, calm eyes, nothing supernatural. That unsettles them more. And the other one? Daniel asked. Poor thing. Humans ask that question constantly. Do you really see me? Would you still look at me if you did? You dislike the other one? I answered. The response landed perfectly. A tiny shift in posture, pulse accelerating, breathing shallower, recognition. Daniel attempted humor next. Most do. Humor is simply fear wearing makeup. So what is this place? He asked. A refuge. For who? For those unable to survive their own hunger in daylight. Daniel laughed softly, nervously. But this is some kind of club? If that explanation comforts you. His eyes drifted toward the patrons beyond the curtain. A woman straddling another woman's lap while they whispered forehead to forehead. A man crying silently while an older woman stroked his hair. Hands, mouths, longing, intimacy, recognition. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. You don't seem surprised by any of this. I built it. That silenced him. Good. I prefer silence. Humans rush to fill silence with honesty eventually. Sure enough, Daniel spoke again within seconds. I used to think places like this were fake. They are. He frowned. What? The fantasies are fake. The desires are not. Daniel picked up the wine. He disliked wine. He drank anyway. Humans betray themselves constantly. It is one of their more charming qualities. Outside, the booth, thunder rolled softly through the city. Rain streaked the windows. Music drifted through candlelight. Daniel looked tired in a way sleep never fixes. I knew the shape immediately. Romantic collapse. One of humanity's favorite forms of self-destruction. She left you recently, I said. Daniel nearly choked on the wine. How do you know? That. You still wear the ring. His hand moved instinctively toward it. I forgot to take it off. No, I said gently. You wanted her absence to remain visible. That hurt him. Excellent. Truth should. Daniel looked away from me. The candlelight soft against his face. She said I made everything about me. Did you? Yes. Interesting. Immediate honesty. Perhaps there was hope for him after all. She said loving me felt exhausting. Was she wrong? Daniel laughed quietly, not amusement. Recognition. No. The booth darkened slightly while rain tapped against distant windows. Daniel studied me carefully. You talk like a therapist. No. Then what are you? Humans always ask eventually. As though naming a thing reduces its danger. A collector, I answered. Of what? Whatever people cannot carry alone. Daniel stared at me. Fear, curiosity, attraction. Excellent. The combination is highly productive. You say strange things, he whispered. I hear stranger ones. His pulse quickened slightly. Like what? I leaned back slowly. The lonely ask to be desired. The ashamed ask to be forgiven. The guilty asked to suffer beautifully enough to feel redeemed. The powerful asked to surrender. The broken asked someone to finally tell them the truth. Daniel swallowed hard. And what do you ask for? There it was, the dangerous question. After all these centuries, it still wounds cleanly. I looked toward the candle, flame reflected in black marble. I did not ask, a lie, not entirely, but enough. Daniel watched me too carefully then. You seem lonely. Ah, there it was. The room cooled slightly. Music softened. Even the candle bent differently. Humans become reckless the moment they discover one genuine truth. They mistake recognition for intimacy. When men discover one true thing, I told him quietly, they often mistake it for permission. Daniel lowered his eyes. I'm sorry. No, I replied. You are not. That nearly made him smile. Good. I dislike cowardice. He studied me carefully. You really are lonely, though. Interesting. Most people retreat after sensing danger. Daniel leaned closer toward it. I approached him slowly. Humans expect seduction to feel urgent. Real seduction rarely hurries. I stopped close enough to hear his heartbeat clearly. Women survive you, I whispered. Daniel froze. You should listen more carefully when they describe the experience. That landed precisely where intended. No defense. No argument. Only shame. Much better. I touched his wrist lightly. The memory opened immediately. Memories are alive. Most humans simply refuse to notice. Suddenly, we stood inside Daniel's apartment months earlier. Rain against the fire escape, coffee burning in the kitchen, a woman near the doorway gripping a suitcase, Elena, beautiful, exhausted, dangerously, close to finally choosing herself. Daniel stared at the memory helplessly. Is this real? He whispered, more real than most things humans tell themselves. Elena looked at him with devastating calm. Not anger, worse, disappointment. I can't keep disappearing so. You feel important, she told him. Daniel flinched. Memory does not soften truth. That is why humans avoid it. I loved you, Daniel whispered toward the memory. Elena laughed sadly. No, she answered. You loved needing me? Daniel closed his eyes. The shame nearly folded him in half. Good. Transformation begins where self-deception dies. The memory shifted again. Elena alone inside her car, crying quietly, trying not to return, trying not to hope. Humans call heartbreak romantic because admitting its humiliation would destroy too many songs. The memory shifted again. Elena standing outside Daniel's apartment weeks later with a letter in her hand. Then seeing another woman through the window. Daniel collapsed against the kitchen counter. Oh God, he had forgotten. Interesting. Humans forget whatever protects them from themselves. She came back, he whispered. She almost did, I answered. Daniel stared at the memory. I didn't know. No. The memory dissolved slowly. Rain, fire escape, coffee, Elena, gone. We returned to the booth. Daniel looked at me differently now, less attraction, more fear. Excellent. Fear and desire have always shared architecture. What are you? He whispered again. A mirror, I replied. That's not an answer. It is the only one that matters tonight. Outside the booth, the city continued drowning beneath rain while candlelight drifted through the velvet veil like liquid. Fire. Daniel looked fragile suddenly. Not weak. Human. There's a difference. I don't think I like this place, he admitted. That is because it notices you. The silence between us deepened. Music, rain, heartbeats, desire, regret. Veil fit quietly upon all of it. Daniel finished the wine. Interesting. I should leave, he whispered. Yes, he frowned. You agree? Leaving is often wise, but I smiled faintly. Humans rarely come here because they desire wisdom. That nearly made him laugh again. Nearly. Instead, he asked the question every guest eventually asks, what happens if I stay? Ah, there it was. The real invitation. I stood slowly. Candlelight moved across black velvet. Rain shimmered beyond distant windows. Then, I said softly, you tell me the truth. Daniel followed me deeper into the velvet veil. He would later tell himself he had no choice. Humans are fond of that lie. Choice terrifies them more than temptation. Temptation can be blamed on someone else. Choice cannot. We passed through the mirrored hall beyond the main chamber. The music changed there, softer, older, the kind of melody that feels remembered rather than heard. Daniel looked at the mirrors lining the walls. That was unwise. Mirrors inside the velvet veil do not reflect faces. They reflect negotiations, the person you were, the person you pretend to be, the thing inside you still waiting to be fed. One mirror showed Daniel as a little boy sitting alone on a staircase, listening to adults argue behind a locked door. Another showed him older, gray-haired, sitting in an apartment filled with unopened mail and dust. Another showed Elena sleeping peacefully beside someone who knew how to let love breathe. Daniel stopped walking. That isn't fair, he whispered. No, I said, but it is useful. His eyes moved to the next mirror. It showed me, not as I stood now, not black velvet and gold jewelry and calm control. It showed me beneath a white moon, soaked in rain, wearing a pale gown stained. Dark at the hem, a man stood behind me. His hand rested against my throat. On his finger was a ring shaped like a thorned crescent. Daniel saw it. So did I. For one breath, the velvet veil became silent. Then the mirror blackened. Daniel looked at me. What was that? A lie. Are you sure? No. That answer frightened him more than certainty would have. Good. Truth should be used carefully. We entered the private chamber at the end of the hall. Blue fire burned without wood. Black water rested inside a silver bowl. Books older than the city lined the walls. The room smelled of rain, roses, smoke, and something metallic beneath all three. Daniel hesitated near the doorway. Smart, very smart. This room unsettles even immortals. This is where bargains happen? He asked, yes. What kind? The lonely ask to be desired. The ashamed ask to be forgiven. The guilty ask to suffer beautifully enough to feel redeemed. And what do you ask for? Again, that question. Humans are so careless with knives when they do not realize they're holding one. I told you, I said. I do not ask. Daniel stepped closer. But you want. The fire sank lower. The black water trembled. Somewhere beneath us, far below the public rooms, something shifted in its sleep. Daniel noticed none of it. He was too focused on me. Poor reckless thing. Yes, I said. I want. The admission surprised him. It surprised me too. The room seemed to lean closer. What do you want? He asked. For a moment, I almost answered. A dangerous impulse. There are confessions even monsters should not make in front of humans. I wanted my name, my first name, my true name. The one buried beneath Seraphine veil. The one I had lost somewhere between death and immortality. I wanted to remember the woman who walked into the velvet veil before I became its keeper. I wanted to know whether I had been victim, monster, lover, betrayer, or all of them. Instead, I said, I want you to stop pretending regret is the same as transformation. Daniel looked wounded. Good. He needed the wound. What am I supposed to do? He asked. Begin with the truth. I did. No, I said. You confess pain. That is not the same thing. Daniel looked toward the black water. It reflected Elena's face. Not angry. Not broken. Free. That hurt him more than suffering would have. Humans are strange. They often prefer to imagine the people they harmed as permanently ruined. It makes their guilt feel important. Elena's freedom offended his grief. The water rippled. Daniel stepped closer. She's happier without me. Yes, the word was clean, merciless, necessary. He closed his eyes, and I hate that. There it was, the real confession. I smiled softly. Now we can begin. Before Daniel could answer, Lucien appeared in the doorway. He did not knock. Lucien always knocks unless the world is ending. Madam, he said. His voice was careful, too careful. I turned. What is it? A patron has entered below. Below. The word moved through the room like cold water. The lower halls beneath the velvet veil are not meant for ordinary hunger. Some doors exist for indulgence. Others exist because certain nightmares require architecture. Which patron? I asked. Lucien hesitated. That frightened me more than the answer itself. The thorn bearer. The name struck the room like a blade sliding beneath old scar tissue. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. Daniel noticed. Humans notice vulnerability in immortals immediately. It reassures them. He asked for you by your first name, Lucien continued. No, not possible. I remembered empires collapsing. I remembered oceans red with war. I remembered every confession, whispered into my hands across centuries. But I did not remember the woman who existed before Seraphine Veil. That memory had been taken, or surrendered, or destroyed. Even now, I do not know which truth hurts most. Then the bell sounded beneath the floor. One slow note, then another, then another. The mirrors in the hallway turned black instantly. Daniel looked toward me. You said you didn't remember, he whispered. I could not answer, because something beneath the velvet veil had just spoken the name buried beneath my immortality. And part of me recognized the voice. The black water inside the silver bowl rose violently. An image formed. A younger version of myself standing. Beneath a white moon, a man beside me, his hand against my face, a thorned crescent ring on his finger. Then the vision shattered. The silver bowl cracked apart. Frost crawled across the table. Get him out, I told Lucien. Daniel resisted only long enough to look back at me. Poor thing. He believed this story belonged to him. It did not. Not anymore. The bell sounded again. And beneath it came a voice, male, amused, ancient, speaking a name I had not heard in centuries. My real name. The one beneath Seraphine Veil. Fear is strange after immortality. It arrives quietly. Not panic, recognition. The understanding that the past has finally located you. Forget this place, I told Daniel. I won't. You will if I ask. And we both knew I could make it happen. But the voice below laughed softly. The sound moved through my bones like memory returning sharpened. For the first time in a very long while, I was no longer certain the velvet veil belonged to me. Lucien dragged Daniel toward the exit while the hallway distorted around us. Mirrors. Blackened. Music reversed itself into static and rain. The city beyond the door waited cold and unaware. Daniel looked back only once. I stood alone beside the shattered bowl while blue fire died around me. The thorn bearer had returned. And somewhere beneath centuries of silk and secrets and carefully cultivated composure, the woman I used to be had begun screaming. This has been a lost, never lost presentation. Like and subscribe if you want more.